All right, everybody, this is a quick rundown of the Institutional Review Board process. It's also what I've been referring to when I say IRB. So Kuiper College has an Institutional Review Board. This is very common practice within the context of research. This is the main intent of an IRB is to make sure that you're holding the researchers accountable for doing ethical studies and that you're not causing any harm to human subjects. And so this is really important, especially for beginning researchers, is you might unintentionally be creating harm to somebody just based on lack of knowledge and experience, and that's at no shame of the researchers. But this is a good check and balance, and it really aligns, with the research or with social work principles of protecting the dignity and worth of humans. So aligns completely with them and make sure that informed consent is occurring and that there is minimal to no harm done to human subjects. So I think the biggest parts that we need to be aware of in the immediate is how or what's being required of us to submit as part of our IRB request. And so you will need to end up doing a full review. So there's an exempt, there's an expedited, and there's a full. We opt for full in this class just because it's part of the learning process. Now, if you would propose your studies outside of this class as a professional, a professor, you might not necessarily need to do a full review at the level we're at, but for the sake of the class and the learning, we do request a full review. So the document outlines all of that. And I sent you today Appendix A and Appendix B, which are two things that you'll have to fill out as part of your request. The first is the application for a review of research involving human subjects. And so your group is going to have to go through this whole thing and submit it as part of your request. And so the name of the investigator will be all of the group members. My name will be the faculty sponsor, the social work department. Just put my information in here. You can get it off Sakai. Names of additional investigators, just put all of yours on this line. Don't worry about this one. What's the title of your project? So you might have your research question, but your group is going to have to start formulating what your title is. What is your purpose? It's a class project for Social Work 340, which is social work research. So SW 340, social work research. You are going to be requesting a full review, certifications. You sign off on this. So just kind of knowing that the Belmont report is kind of a standard within protecting human rights. You can Google it if you want to read it, but basically you just have to know that you're committing to respect for persons, I can never say this word. It's basically maximizing the possible benefits while minimizing possible harm. It's a real popular term in ethics. You'll hear it again when you are in social work capstone and the concept of justice. So you will all sign off on them. I will have to sign off on them as well. So that is Appendix A. This is pretty much just like reporting, but the thing that you need to know that you have to come up with is the title of your project, which you will also need for Appendix B, which is the outline of your project description. And so these are the pieces, you want to shoot for about 2 pages, it says, that you need to explain to the board. Use this outline as the motto and use each subsection, making sure you clearly mark the heading. So I would just start it off with your name, the department, who the faculty sponsor is, and reference our class. Do the title, and then give the summary, the methodology, potential risks and benefits and safeguards, and then describe any potential personal or social benefits to non-participants. So why are we doing this? How could this help the greater population? So you might even be able to reference that, like, this will be disseminated to student development, possibly. However, if you did whatever you decide. So going up through these, just know that as part of your project summary, you kind of got to come up with some objectives of why this is important. You can pull those from your literature review. Look back on the previous examples too, because it's going to give you an example of how to use this. Because obviously, I mean, it's for a class, so I guess purpose is to get a good grade, but how could this potentially be used for the greater good? And so what objectives are driving that? Like, what do you want your audience to know? Whoever reads this or hears your presentation, what do you want them to take away from it? So that's just a summary and how you are going to do this. And so identify the variables to be manipulated and or measured and describe their expected relationships. So if you're thinking about your research projects, I'm going to keep going back to the physical health because that's the one that we've been talking about in this class, is you are looking at the variables of eating habits and you're looking at the impact it has on college student functionality. And so we're not implementing any sort of intervention to manipulate or improve, but we're looking at those things. So how are we going to collect the data? We're going to administer surveys. We're going to have a table in the atrium, and we're going to ask every person who comes past to fill something out. We're going to host a research night and invite students to come who are around to fill out surveys and get donuts. I don't know, but you're going to have to describe that in the methodology section. You also are going to have a good idea of your questions that you're going to ask because it's going to be included in the appendix. If there's any incentives, you have to make sure you identify them there and make sure you're clear on how that doesn't translate into bribery, how you're going to find your subject. So sampling, measurements, those types of things. Describe the activities in which participants will be engaged, so survey taking, whatever, and then making sure it's clear if there's any deception being used. There shouldn't be in this level of research, but if there is, add that there. And then identify any possible sources of physical, psychological, or social risk, including potential violations of rights to privacy and free choice. We'll talk a little bit more in class, but if someone discloses in their survey possible harm to self or others, whether it's somehow the topic comes up, you do need to make sure you put in there that it has to be disclosed in some way, all those fun things. So this is pretty self-explanatory through here. I have also shared with you an example from a previous class's proposal. So that will give you some idea of how much detail, how much specifics, how to write things in a certain way. I would use that not to copy and paste from, but as your guide to kind of be like, oh, hey, this is what they're looking for in each section. So this is due February 26th, or about 20 days away. So I would suggest making sure you're very aware of it and starting on as much of it as you can. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit more education that we need to give you around the methodology, but the other areas you are going to want to start looking at as well. Another big piece you are going to want to do, and we've started on this, is the informed consent. The IRB manual, which I'll link into Kai, gives very specific things that need to be included in your informed consent. My suggestion again would be to go back to the examples from previous classes because the checklist looks very, very daunting about what you need to include. So look at how other students have crafted it before. It'll give you, it's okay to not reinvent the wheel. It's not okay to use it verbatim, but it's okay because informed consent includes all the same kind of concepts. It's okay to look at that to see how people word it and structure it. So make sure that you are keeping your informed consent and then appendix A and B on your radar. So there's that. We'll answer questions on Monday about it and give some space to work on it in class. But I want you to have this information so you know the expectations of what's coming up in the next 20 days.